I want to first start by talking about the LinkedIn Bay Area launch. I know there was a ton of things that happened in the lead up to that. Can we just talk about the event, what it took to make the event happen, all the mistakes that happened along the way, and then how the event went?
Oh my God. It's so much of these moments that appear so effortless and are such huge successes are these total trial by fires in the background. It's pretty amazing. And this Bay Area launch was no different. It was right up before the holidays. We had, one co-host. We always like to go out with a co-host who was, we're dealing with an industry where end up with a lot of introverts. And we had one co-host who was getting cold feet on wanting to launch with us. And we had set up our entire date for launching around this and started to talk about this. And then it was like, wait, now the rug is getting pulled out from under us. Are we actually going to have a Bay Area launch? This is my hometown. So it's got to be good. Like, I can't come back and do some half-baked launch. It better be good, especially when you're talking about Silicon Valley and tech and us building some incredibly novel tech. This better be good. And so that was kind of stressful. We were going into the holidays, and our hosts of the venue, which was like incredible, LinkedIn, they gave us access to their space to bring the community and the industry for elder care together. They're all off on holiday. So we're trying to nail down dates and availability and confirmations. It's just getting out of office. Rightly so, because everybody's home. So there's a lot of faith, having faith and just moving forward and just trusting the fact that this is going to happen. It's all going to come together, and surrendering to that. And we did. We got through the holidays. We popped up on the other side of New Year's. We ended up with not just one co-host. We ended up with 3. We ended up getting every single thing that we asked for because LinkedIn's amazing on our date, our venue, our time, and the team combination of our West Coast team and our East Coast team flew down to the Bay Area. And it was such profound and good vibes to have this go off so well. I was walking through it in that dream state because, we've talked about this, Chris. I'm deep in the middle of caregiving right now. And so for those of you who are there along with me, the world takes on a really weird quality when you go into these urgent modes of caregiving. I like to refer to it when I'm not in it like tunnel vision. You just really can't understand the world in the same way you normally do. And so the weirdest part for me was everything is going amazing with our Bay Area launch, with tendercare, with, getting a ton of business leaders showing up. And I'm sitting there as a daughter ping-ponging back and forth to, the hospital over in San Francisco with UCSF to see my mom. And none of it really making sense in the way that I had anticipated it was going to feel. It was like, wow, everything's so good. And yet this is really hard for me to be showing up with 100% energy while I feel like there's so much for me going on at home with my mom. So surreal. It was a total victory and it's such a win. And our team showed up so strong. Everybody's such badasses. But I was kind of in that tunnel vision mode for a lot of it.
For those who don't know what this launch means, what does that mean when we go out to a city and launch?
This is us planting a flag and saying, we're here. We're here for all families who are going through this chapter, looking for help, finding themselves in an ER or a hospital or on the other side of a diagnosis. We are here for you so that you now have an answer where there wasn't one before. Where do I go? What do I do? What does this mean now that we have this new condition we're living with? What does this mean now that we have, a discharge date from an ER visit that requires so much more from family that isn't set up to do this? And on the other side, it's going out and saying hello to the elder care industry, all these amazing business owners, professionals who are out there whether it's home care, elder care, attorneys, or, senior move managers, so many different types of professionals in this industry. And we say hello and we say, we know that you are living in an industry that is filled with so many amazing people, but that isn't ultimately serving you in the way it should, which is that you're running amazing businesses, you're delivering incredibly high quality services, and your end customer, your family can't find you. They can't find you. They can't find you on Google. They can't find you. They're not hearing about you in the hospital. They're not hearing about you from doctors. This is broken. And so when we go to launch, what we're saying is, hello, and we're here to fix this for you. We're here for you, both sides, which is just such a cool thing to be able to bring to any city. And for me, the Bay Area is especially important because 4 generations of my family have grown up there. So this is not just any city. This is my city, I've got more cities now, but this is really my city. And so, we've always talked about this. Tendercare is a gift. At the end of the day, it's a gift. It's to give more than we take to everyone, who's involved in this chapter. And so when we go out to a launch like this, it's like a big present wrapped up that we are serving to everybody on a platter.
It's interesting that you bring up that it's a gift to people. I was thinking about how much energy all of this requires, having to go to another city, having to leave your family back home, all while juggling your caregiving duties for your parents. Do you ever have to sit and think about why it is that you're doing all this to continue? Because this is a lot of effort for someone to take on. What is the reason for all this?
Yeah. My therapist asks me this all the time. Like, why are you doing this to yourself? This is so crazy. I come from a long line of high energy people, for good or for bad, both my mom and my dad. My dad was like a long distance runner. My mom, brilliant, but also like can get manic. And so it's in my blood, I think, to just have just an excess of energy, but it's also the way that I learn. And so, my first job was as a teacher. I was a professor. And I found, actually, I was, a pretty mediocre college student. I did not pay attention. I tried to do as little as possible, in order to still do well, coming at education from all the wrong ways in college. I totally pissed that away. But when I became a professor, right, and you're in the act of teaching other people, that's when I truly got it. I got the material. I understood it. And so for me, when I see people that I love get sick, when I see them get frail, when I see them need help, Tendercare is a gift to everybody else, but it's also a gift to me because I'm trying to understand, why do we live in a world in which people we love get sick? Why do we live in a world that makes it so hard for us to do good things for each other when we need help? I don't understand that. I still don't understand that. I refuse to accept it also. And so in some ways, this is that sort of refusal to exist in a world that doesn't make sense to me.
It's amazing. And it's beautiful. And it's also, I was going to add that also, it's very crazy to see everything that you do and to see how much you serve your team, and also try your best to show up for your parents, and also try to show up for the people like at this LinkedIn event. It's tiring for me to watch. So I can't imagine how it is for you, but to see you continue is amazing. And I think people who use Tendercare and families that are on the platform should be amazed at that. When you're in the room at the LinkedIn event and you're looking at all these elder care professionals, are you getting validated by the way that they present themselves? Or is there anything that's happening in the room that you're like, yeah, this is exactly why I've reached out to all these people, or this is why you guys deserve to be in the room?
First, before we go into that, I kind of want to go back for just a second to how exhausting it is to watch me. I think that anything worth doing should be really tiring. And the reason I say that is I don't think greatness happens by accident. I don't think making great things happens by sort of half measures, right? So if you want to live a life in which you can give something great, right? Back to your community, back to the industry, whatever the thing is, you are going to get tired in doing that. And so you kind of have to just accept that that is part of the bargain of wanting to live a life in which you're creating something that reaches a certain level of quality. So I just think that's the deal. And I think if you look across any different category, athletes, like any sort of industry, you're probably looking at a few people who are really tired at a certain point. They might not be eventually, like, and you can't sustain it forever, but that's part of the bargain. So that's the first piece. The second is that I actually don't think I'm as tired as everybody we serve. And the reason I say that is I'm incredibly lucky in a one really central key way, which is I wouldn't be here and I wouldn't be in a position to build tendercare if I did not happen to be lucky enough, truly, and I say this, like hit the lottery by taking care of a father who worked in an industry that still gave out pensions. And the reason I say that is what that gave me, the gift that gave me was it removed the burden of just how astronomically expensive, both in time and in actual costs, it is to take care of someone living with Alzheimer's long term. It's just wildly expensive. And if I had not been in that very specific combination of, coming from tech, taking care of a father who has a pension that I can use to apply towards his care, I'd be just as tired as so many of the people who are out there and facing this without that real support system around us. So yes, it is tiring to watch me. I think it is like triply tiring to watch someone who doesn't have that try and do this work. So that's what motivates me. It's like, yeah, I'm tired, but like, there's no way, I would be able to do this, especially given some of the stories we hear of people who are sharing what they're out there doing. And so I think keeping it in perspective is so important, One, life is tiring. That's just part of the deal, right? That's the bargain. And then two, I'm not half as tired as the thousands of people out in tendercare. Okay, sorry. And then you wanted me to talk about the trusted network. Yeah, there's a certain kind of person who decides, hey, you know what I'm going to do with my life? I could have all these different things I'm going to spend my time on. I want to spend it on taking care of your grandparents. Like, think about that. What kind of person is like, this is what I want to spend my whole day with. I want to surround myself with grandpas and grandmas. They're pretty cool. Like, that is a cool person. And we need more of them in our community. So when I walk into a room of people who've made that choice, right? And there's a million different reasons that they make that choice. I just love them. It's so affirming. I'm like, I'm so glad that you're a human and I'm a human too, because your choices just validate, like, I'm part of the right species, And when I walk into a group like the one at the Bay Area, where it's all led by reputation, it's like you're not in that room unless someone else in the industry thought you were pretty special too. You're speaking to people who are holding our communities together. Like, these are the ones. They're also not just working in elder care. They're usually the soccer coaches. They're the community organizers. They're the volunteers. They usually have like 5-6 different jobs on top of what they do for actual work when you get to know them and to talk to them. Like our co-hosts at LinkedIn, in their free time, they play on bands with other emergency room doctors, right? Out at, senior living homes. This is the kind of human that you get to spend time with. So it's just really special. I feel honored to get to start to stitch together this network and understand what makes these leaders so unique and such givers. I think the world moves super fast, and I think there's not a lot of room for spending time on the givers, That's just not the way the typical game is played. It's played with like, who's got the most outsized footprint, who's got the biggest marketing budget. It's not on these individuals who are actually the ones who are keeping our communities really healthy. So it feels like important work that we're doing. And it's always good to get in the room and actually spend time with them face to face.
Yeah, I agree. It is super important work. So you spend a lot of time with people in the elder care space. And we also spend a lot of time talking to different families and caregivers, and specifically solo caregivers. A theme that I saw in the comment sections and in the DMs and different content that was posted over the last couple of weeks is there's a lot of solo caregivers out there who have siblings who wish they would come in and help more, or maybe they've asked to come in and help more. Do you have a take on this and maybe why this is like a recurring theme?
Yeah. I struggled with this myself. It was so confusing to me in the early years. I've got a younger brother, and I couldn't understand why it felt so much like all of this was falling on my shoulders. And then, and I love my brother. We have a great relationship, but through the years, I came to understand and see it so differently, which is it's really hard for him to see our dad sick, and it pains him in a way that it doesn't pain me. And that really changed my perspective on this, which was, maybe it's easier for me to do some of this work. The emotional toll that it takes on me is less. And so it gave me more empathy too, for what I hear often. You got one sibling who's like doing a lot, starting to get resentful for another sibling. I think we all deal with loss and grief and illness very differently. And so that doesn't make it okay, but I think it helped me understand why we all don't behave the same around it. We come to it with very different sort of projections and pain levels or tolerance levels. I don't think it's going to go away. I think it's the same thing with what you see is like regular care, like personality differences in families and in siblings. Like, we're different people. So when it comes to something like this, we're going to approach it differently. The trick, I think, is to understanding that everyone's working towards the same North Star. So in my case with my brother, it's that dad is healthy, that he's safe, and as much as we possibly can, that we're trying to make decisions that he would have wanted to make himself. We didn't get to sit down with him for every conversation, but that, like, generally my dad was a pretty opinionated guy. We know how he would have felt about things. And if it's reasonable and we think we can do it, like, are we carrying that out on his behalf?
It's interesting that you bring that up, because that was something that I've always been curious about with people who are caring for others who may not be able to consent in the same way they were able to before. It sounds like you have that handled. Like, you kind of know what your dad would like and wouldn't like. Do you still struggle after all these years trying to make decisions and see if this is something that your dad would approve or not?
Yeah, such a good question. I've had such a journey with trying to figure this out, because, you go through first denial. He's not actually sick. He's going to come back. And so this is just like a placeholder of keeping things going for a little while. Then it goes to like, okay, he's probably never going to get better. There's no cure for Alzheimer's. We're too far in at this point. So now it's about like, okay, well, what do you have wanted to do? We had an emergency room visit a few years ago in a palliative care. A member of the palliative care team came to come talk to us. It was for a UTI, luckily, so it was like an easy fix for my dad. But at the time, we weren't sure if it was a stroke, like what's going on. We got all the CAT scans, MRIs, what have you. And the palliative care team, there was such a gift with how they explained it, which is like, it's okay if you didn't have the conversation and you have it written down and everything is like fully done, with dotted I's and T's ahead of time. What would your dad would have wanted? Like, that's enough. Like, and when you use that, you can kind of go in the same direction of like, this person, you spent a lot of time with this person, what they would want. And that was really helpful for a time. and we've been living in that chapter for a few years. The zone that I'm moving into now is like, okay, I know what my dad would have wanted, right? But what do I want? We've been at this now for 15 years. There's parts of it that can be really hard. My main caregiver, who's amazing, she's on vacation. She's visiting her family for a month. So I've got a backup caregiver right now. I have to train them. I got to stay eyes on that. I'm always afraid that someone's going to get the cold or have to call in sick that day. And then I got to scramble for, backup care at any given time. It's a lot to do for 15 years. And so the zone that I'm moving into is like, okay, I know my dad is like, yes, this is what I want, but also like, at what cost does this come to me? I've got, a 7-month-old now. I've got a 4-year-old. That's like a lot of pressure on me, especially as, we end up in the ER more and more often. I have to go call for a non-emergency assist from our amazing firemen more and more often now. And this can come at any time, what role do my own sort of wishes play in this caregiving dance we're in, in addition to what my dad would have wanted for himself? We're in that space now. I haven't figured it out, but that's kind of the evolution of where things are going.
Yeah. It sounds like a roller coaster of things to navigate, and it's always unexpected. Like it's hard to expect what's going to happen. You never know what the next phone call is going to be about. And I think that's why it's been so important for me to push, politely and gently to continue doing stuff like this with you, because I think you sharing your perspective as a caregiver for your parents is so important for others to hear, because we've heard this many times before, that when people can see themselves on the other side of the screen, in this case, when they listen to this podcast and they see that the founder and the CEO of tendercare is also dealing with the same things that millions of other Americans are dealing with, I think it puts a lot of things into perspective.
It's hard, man. This I don't think this is anything that anyone would ever volunteer and ask for. It's like, no. It reveals a lot about our character when we're put into this role. And the thing I love about caregivers so much is I'm already speaking to my people, because it's already the people who are like, yeah, I'm going to step up in this shitty situation. I am going to be the one that really like shows up for my family. Even if I've got like my mom, I've got super complicated feelings, but I was still there at the hospital. I'm still the one advocating, writing the letters, making sure she gets resources and support. And that's a choice. So I love other caregivers because they've also made a similar choice, right? So it's just like, oh, I see you. I'm there with you. And yes, there are parts of this where you're like, come on, like, dude, can we get a break? I don't know if anyone else feels this way, but like the part that's hardest for me now as a parent is it's a double whammy, because now not only am I a caregiver for my parents, I'm also a parent, and I'm surrounded by families who lean on their parents for support in parenting their kids. So it's like, oh, no problem. We've got date night. I'm going to call in my, grandma or calling grandpa. Oh, that's such a heartbreaker for me, because that is not on the table. That's not a reality that we are living with. It's like, nope, there's no grandma, there's no grandpa to call, And so not only one, does that mean there's no date night, right? Most of the time, but also like, what is that like? Like for all of those families out there that don't know what we're all doing, like don't understand this caregiver life. It to me feels like such a luxury. Like, wow, to be surrounded by healthy people, that's got to feel so good. I don't know. You guys have to tell me. I'm not sure.
I think about this perspective all the time. I remember when we spent some time earlier last year, and you were telling me like you are so privileged to have parents that are willing to be grandma and grandpa, and they're in the vicinity. Like you guys live in the same area, and I'm just now starting to really fully understand what you meant by that.
Oh my God, you are it's going to be so good. You're going to realize how good it is, Chris. You'd be like, bye, have fun with grandma and grandpa. Gotta go. Yeah, that's essential, right? I do think like that goes back to, we lived in communities. We lived in tribes. We were used to having group dynamics when raising our young and taking care of our old. We have self-selected out of that in the United States. We all like to have our own sort of isolated zones. And there's some upsides to that. And then there's some real pressure points in that. The piece that I'm energized by is some of what I'm seeing happening with this intergenerational experimentation. College students living with senior living residents. I hope we see more of this, because all you see when you open up the newspaper is like isolation, depression, anxiety. It feels like there's a lot happening, but we've kind of done it to ourselves. We've done it to ourselves in the choices of how we choose to live, how far away we choose to live from one another. And sometimes we can't help that, but it's a real killer when it comes to trying to create our own self-contained support systems. I don't think it's a winning battle.
I think I've been thinking about this so much, especially with me going to the Philippines for the last month. That's how it's set up in the Philippines. People, there are I got uncles who live with their parents, who live with their grandparents, and they're all in the same house. Or if it's not in the same house, it's at least they live across the street. And that was something that my parents held on to when they came to America. It was, we are all going to stick together because, one, we don't know anybody in this country. And two, this is how we do it back home. And that has been, that's how I grew up, and that's how I want to continue. And it's been, a bit of a learning curve for my wife, because that's not how she grew up. And as we prepare to purchase a house this year, that's something that I'm very adamant about. I either want my parents to live in the same house, or they will be our next door neighbor. Not because I want grandma and grandpa to be able to take care of our children. Yeah, that's great. But it's because I want to be next to my parents until they're no longer here.
You're just the best, Chris. I just think you're just so cool. But also Faith, you watch, she's going to change her tune so fast. The minute little Chris or little Faith comes into the world, she's be like, okay, I got it. Can you move in closer? Next door is not close enough. How about just right here in my living room? It's amazing how much, bringing new life and new babies into the world changes that. So I understand it's a journey. Having been on the other side of in-laws myself, that's not always the easiest of oh, wait, what? What are we going to do for the rest of our life? But it does all start to make sense once you have kids.
So there's been a lot going on at tendercare as usual. There's always new things shipping and things on the horizon. What has been, what has come out, or what's new with tendercare that's happened in the last month that you're really excited about?
First, we're building something so important for society. So it feels like immense privilege to be so close to this. This is essential for our community, for our society to figure this out. And every day is wild. It's a wild ride at tendercare. It's so hard, and it's also so much fun. It's very confusing for something to be so hard and also fun. It's weird. But I think this last month was a real groundbreaker for us. We launched Find Help, and Find Help, it's on our website. I've used twice now for my own family. And I have seen firsthand how much better and more effective and more supported I have felt by using what is ultimately a really simple thing. It's a free intake. It's an AI enabled intake to actually help me get through that. I mentioned this tunnel vision thinking, this cloudy thinking of oh man, we got this thing that's happening and I don't know what to do about it. I don't even know the right questions to ask. Find Help immediately goes into asking you cleaner and cleaner questions to get to a very smart strategic game plan of how you are going to put some pieces in place to take care of you or your family. And I've watched it for my own family. This thing, which we have not actually really talked about with the world yet, is going to change so many families' experiences of what is otherwise like a really brutal and scary moment. Like, nobody likes to be in the ER. Nobody likes to go out of a doctor's appointment where they're like, well, here's what you have. Good luck. That's terrible. And so instead, to be able to go to Find Help, because that's what you need at that point, and actually get help, get access to like a game plan, really great local professionals who can actually step in and help you. That is cool. And I am so proud of our team. They've been working on this thing tirelessly, like really refining this so that it can be of maximal use. Like, we just literally had a daughter with a mom who needed to be discharged within 48 hours, who was immunocompromised. Like, that is a scary place to be for a daughter. And to watch her use Find Help and to be able to like effectively help her advocate for her mom in the hospital, for community resources, for professionals, like not overwhelm her, but just give her a roadmap instantly. That is cool, man. So that I'm so excited about. You know, this is important work we're doing here. This is like not, you know, this is not silly stuff. This is real. And then the second thing is something that you can't see or touch in any like real immediate way in tender care, but that's being built invisibly behind the scenes, which is what we're calling like your aging profile. And this is as if you had unlimited funds and a whole team of experts, whether it's specialists, your doctors, whether it's public, you know, like sort of government officials, whether this is like your local community mayor. This is as if you have this entire group of people on your team starting to pull all of the information that makes you, Chris, uniquely you, with your family structure, living together, close by each other, you know, with certain preferences for how you want to do things, with, you know, savings that you want to go towards a house versus going towards, you know, XYZ, helping to build a profile for how you can age well, right? Really well. And I don't mean live longer. I mean like age well. And we're pulling this together on every single person's behalf in order to give them the very best recommendations for how they can either be taken care of or they can take care of other people. And it feels so good to be taking technology that can be used for any number of things, right? You can use it, like we're seeing it now. You can go use it to go build weapons or go fight wars or, you know, do silly things, or to be using it to actually help people live better, truly, like more supported by your family, better uses of your savings and resources, with better professionals that you can trust, you know, when you need to surrender to accepting help from others. That's part of the human experience. That's what we're building behind the scenes at Tender Care. That's the dream. That's the vision. This is why this is like essential. I see this as essential as like, you know, how we think about water, oxygen, now Wi-Fi, like aging well. This isn't something we opt out of. We all age. So the question is going to be like, do you do it well or not? And starting to build the system for everyone to be able to actually do this, that is the work that has been kicked off in earnest over the last, not even the last month, but like we've really seen major gains on pulling this off for everybody. So those are the two things that feel like groundbreakers for me that I'm so excited to start to share and tell the world about.
It's so cool to be behind the scenes and see what's going on. Also, I have so much more respect for the team. Not that I didn't before, but I just remember the first time I ever hopped in a meeting with you and the rest of the team, the first time we ever met in San Francisco. And I remember just mouthing off like some ideas of like, yeah, this would be great and that would be great. And that was before I ever saw behind the scenes how the sausage is made and how difficult it is to like make things work in a way that's actually workable. And I don't say this to discourage other teams of like, yeah, making stuff is really hard. I say this to give a shout out to the team behind the scenes who is making and like refining and working tirelessly to make these things work seamlessly. I think about that thing that you said all the time where like, if something is working seamlessly, it means that there's so much pain and heartache that has had to happen for this to become so seamless.
I know, right? Well, when you see like a world-class dancer, do you know how much pain they went through in order to like float through the air in front of you? Like that's how that works, right? This is the only way. I don't think there's a shortcut. I truly don't think so. And anytime that anyone tells you there's a shortcut, I would seriously question them because I think anything that you're experiencing, first of all, we're all surrounded by things made by each other, right? So everything in front of us, including this computer, like all of this has been made by someone else thinking about our experience. And so if you're having a good experience, that is someone who's poured their whole life into making sure that that's the case and probably went through like 1,000 different tweaks and iterations to make that the case. And so you really got to be committed to the craftsmanship of anything, to make anything, right? All you have to do is try and make something to realize like, wow, turns out that's super hard. Turns out to have like newfound respect for all of the things that are made in your life. And I'm so glad to hear you say that, Chris, because I feel like we've converted you into like building and making things alongside us. I mean, you've been making things for a long time and really launching stories, but to really bring you in and have your perspective and also have you represent so many people who are sharing their story with you on how do we build for them so that we can absorb that pain even more to make a better experience. That's been magic. So it's so good. I love it. It's, peanut butter and jelly.
Scrolling through your LinkedIn and seeing everybody that interacts with you, I see a lot of different leaders and people in the workforce and people who are running their own company. I saw that you've been full-time with tendercare now for 4 years. I don't know how accurate that is. I'm sure it's been maybe a bit longer than that. But in this time of running your own company and being a leader, what's like a hard-earned lesson that you've really been thinking about lately?
I've seen this like said a few different times, but like building a business is really just an excuse to get to know yourself better, right? And it's the canvas on which you have to come into contact with your own ego, your own limiting beliefs, your own strengths and your weaknesses. You got to really see all of them fairly clear-eyed, and it's always evolving as you go. So I'm always thinking about like, what have I learned about me in this process? And I think you have to be willing to see, right? And one of the things that I'm thinking about now, it's like, I'm lucky enough to be surrounded by so many intelligent, brilliant, talented people on our team who are equally on this journey of self-discovery and working through this. And how do you create an environment and a culture in which you don't leave any of that off the table? How do you invite everybody to see each other and to do this in a way that helps us all produce better work, create a better culture, like not let or squander any of that perspective, right? And there's so many good reasons why it gets squandered. You have to move too fast. So, you got to like shut things down too fast. You just got to like push in one direction, or you don't want to hear like the constructive feedback. Like, how could this have been better? And like really create an environment in which you can actually hear it and people feel safe to be able to share it. I think that's the piece, which is like fearlessness is not just about like marching out into the world and, saying, I'm brave, I'm going to go do something crazy. I think it's about the quiet moments of being like, hey, how did that land for you? How could this have been better? How could I have been better in this? And like really hearing that, because that's going to be the fastest way to accelerate my own leadership capabilities. And if we really are in a rocket ship, which I know we are, what and who we are right now in this rocket ship, before we get to like the millions of miles, before we hit, Neptune, like we're going to have to learn so many skills along the way in order to get there. And you can only do that by remaining super, super open. So that's what's on my mind lately. How do you create the most open environment so that you don't waste what's around you and you also don't waste your own potential?
So good. Cool. Thank you, Shauna. I appreciate your time.
Oh my God. You're the best, Chris. This is always so much fun.